Hey, if they told me I was going to have to follow that, I might have turned the job down. I'm just saying. Lou Desmond here from the Lou Desmond Show, AM 590, The Answer. Man, it gives you chills, doesn't it? Isn't it great to be an American, huh? You know, my show, we cover a lot of local stuff, national stuff, state stuff, whatever it is that is important that day, we try to get covered. And I'm just so proud to be on the station and look at the kind of turnout that we get at events like this and the kind of speakers we get. And I'm just thrilled and blessed to have this microphone and the microphone that I have every day. So thanks, everybody who listens. I really appreciate it. I heard people were talking about hashtags earlier today, and they kind of stole my thunder, but I brought this one. Hashtag MC the event. I was going to put MC the event good, but this is all that would fit. All right, so my job is done here. I've showed that I care, and it matters to me. So can I go now? People in Washington, I swear to God. Folks, do you realize that our two counties make up a larger population than the state of Oregon? And, you know, we can make a difference. We just got to stop sitting on the sidelines. And most of you that are here don't need to hear that because you are here at events like this. But talk to your friends, talk to other people. We need to save this state. I mean, SOS California, you know what I'm saying? We just watched President Reagan talk about our brave men and women in the military who sacrificed. Who, by the way, I'm proud to say my father was in the Navy, served in World War II. I have a nephew currently serving in the Army who is an Apache helicopter pilot. God bless him. Did 2 tours in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan. Couldn't be more proud of our military and what they do around the world. And we have to, because of the major sacrifices that other people have made, be willing to, if you are proud of this country and of this country, you are proud. We have to do what we can, and I'm glad you're here helping us today preserve and protect the American dream. One of our important IE Coalition members is We the People Rising. They are a grassroots, all-volunteer, nationwide network seeking to influence via activism institutions of political corruption in the federal government, as well as state and municipalities, and the corporations and employers that hire and exploit illegal aliens. So we are glad to have them here today. Now, the first speaker that I'm going to introduce is Pete Peterson. Pete has a real shot at being one of the first and few elected statewide Republicans in recent years here in the state of California. He's a conservative guy. And by the way, if you listen to the interview we had with him, he's a guy with a great sense of humor, which I always find important. Kind of reminds me of being Reagan-esque in a way. He's a tall, good-looking guy, well-spoken. He's got a great sense of humor. He'll be out here in just a second. Let me tell you a little bit about him. Pete Peterson first came to California when he attended Pepperdine University to get his master's in public policy. He later became the executive director of the Davenport Institute for Public Engagement and Civic Leadership, also at Pepperdine. He is a nationally recognized trainer, speaker, and advisor on topics relating to increasing civic participation in government, in decision-making processes, and explaining how technology is changing the citizen-government relationship. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next Secretary of State in California, Pete Peterson.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Before I get started, Lou Desmond, ladies and gentlemen. I want to get started by clearing up a few questions that I always hear after I have a chance to speak. I've been on the campaign trail for 10 months, and I still get 3 major questions after I have a chance to introduce myself. Number 1, my real name is Pete Peterson. It's a Norwegian thing. If you're not Norwegian or Scandinavian, I don't expect you to understand, but that is my real name. Number 2, I'm a Republican from Santa Monica. This is what we look like, folks. We're everywhere. As I like to say, whenever I leave the city boundaries, the population of Republicans goes down by 25%. Whenever my wife is with me, it goes down by half. And we're still not too sure yet about our 2-year-old daughter. You know, she still wants a lot of stuff for free. So we're not too sure which way she's going. But number 3, and most importantly, I really want to be your next Secretary of State. Now, it's this last point that seems to confuse so many people. They've seen a lot of politicians come and go, and they may have even met somebody running for Secretary of State, but they've never met anyone who actually wants to be Secretary of State, right? This is always a job that has seemed like what I call either a stepping stone or a couch for somebody terming out of the legislature and looking for either a soft place to land and maybe cool their heels before running on for some other position. And folks, for reasons that I'll get into here in a couple seconds, I hope I'm able to convince you I really want to be your next Secretary of State. So I want to frame my remarks this afternoon in 2 ways. First, why Secretary of State and why me? So first, why Secretary of State? And I think maybe a good place to start would be making sure we all understand what the Secretary of State does. Now, you all are very civically engaged. You're an audience that probably knows the importance of the office, but it probably wouldn't surprise you to know that a lot of your friends don't even know we have a Secretary of State, or they don't even know what they do. I was speaking at an event up in Santa Barbara a couple weeks ago, and someone heard I was running for Secretary of State. A nice older woman approaches me and sticks her finger right in my chest and goes, "Mr. Peterson, I hear you're running for Secretary of State, and I want to know your opinion on the Ukrainian crisis." I had to say, "I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm not running for that Secretary of State. I'm running for California's Secretary of State." So we understand what the Secretary of State does, right? Number 1, they're the chief elections officer for the state of California. They certify ballot measures. They certify elections. They create your ballot information packet that we get that informs us or is supposed to inform us as voters. They're supposed to keep the scales of the election system even and honest. Number 2, and this is for all you small business owners out there, the Secretary of State is also the chief business registrar for California. When you start up a business, you file your papers of registration with the Secretary of State. And when businesses close up or leave the state, they file their papers of dissolution with the Secretary of State. You file your papers, your statement of information with the Secretary of State. How are we doing in those 2 areas? First Chief Elections Officer, the nonpartisan Pew Center on the States out of D.C. recently evaluated all 50 election systems for all 50 states in America, ranking them on 15 different metrics from voter turnout to how we count absentee ballots. In 2012, California was ranked 48th in America. And in 2013, their results were just released 3 weeks ago. We are now ranked 49th. Did you know that California ranks 47th in the percentage of absentee ballots that go unreturned from our military and overseas voters? You know, almost 50% of all ballots we send to California's military and overseas voters never are returned. Do you think anyone in the Secretary of State office is really working on that problem? You know, California is the only state in America without a statewide voter database, which means unlike any other state in America, we still keep our voter rolls county by county. Now, what does that mean? The Pew Center on the States, again, evaluated our election system, and looking at our lack of a statewide voter roll, they anticipated and predicted that we have at least 1 million out-of-date voter files in the state of California. But I want to put your hearts at ease, folks. The Secretary of State did sign a contract, did send out an RFP last year, and awarded a $45 million contract in 2013 to build our database. And the company that was awarded that $45 million contract is called CGI. Now, I can tell from the response we understand who CGI is. Because, you know, in California, we couldn't find any good technology companies that could do this, right? And we couldn't even find an American company. And we couldn't even find a company that was qualified. But that's who we've entrusted to build our statewide voter database. How are we doing on the business registration side? You may have seen over the summer, it was reported by the Sacramento Bee that there was a 6-week backlog in new business registrations. When I told a friend of mine who's a CPA that I was running for Secretary of State, the first thing he did was drop the phone. And then when he picked it back up, he said, you know, Pete, you have to find out how difficult it is as a small business owner to deal with this Secretary of State. We not only make it difficult to start up your business here in California, but we also make it expensive. Do you know California charges an $800 a year business franchise tax? Who has paid that tax? This is the one reason my wife wants me to run, okay? She's a small business owner, an LLC owner. She runs a graphic design firm. And about a year and a half ago, as we were deliberating as to whether I was going to throw my own hat into the ring, she said, Pete, as she's writing that $800 check at the kitchen table, she says, Pete, if you run, you better fix this. And that's what I'm going to do. You know, we charge twice as much as any other state for the so-called privilege of doing business here in California. And if there's one thing, I don't know how big of a story it is here. I'm guessing it is. Certainly, as I said before, I'm from Santa Monica, out there in western Los Angeles County. One of the things that this Toyota movement story has done is actually gotten people's attention to say, you know what? It's not just the Fortune 50 companies, it is the Fortune 2,500 companies that are having a hard time here. I spoke at an event in San Diego the other day, and I was talking about how difficult we make it to start up a business here in California. And a small business owner in San Diego had a medical device business, about 100 employees. He goes, Pete, you know, we get 24 phone calls a month from cities in other states begging us to come move our business there. And I have to tell you, it's getting harder and harder to come up with a reason to stay here in California. Now, the Secretary of State could be doing so much more to make it easier first to, how about filing your business online when you register? How about using something called the internet to register your business? You know, you can do that in Nevada. My friend of mine who's a CPA, he says, you know, when a client comes to me looking to start a business here in California, we go online with the Nevada Secretary of State because we know we can register a business there that same day and my client can open a business checking account. We start the paperwork with Sacramento knowing that it's going to take at least 2 weeks to get registered. And more small business owners I speak to tell me that they're registered in multiple states just because it's so hard to deal with this Secretary of State. Now, why am I doing this? My road here starts about 10 years ago. I come from a private sector background. I was in the printing and graphic service business for about 12 years. I volunteered on a gubernatorial campaign, and what I can only call an early onset midlife crisis, I realized I was having a lot more fun on the campaign just as a volunteer, licking envelopes and making phone calls than I was in my day job. And I was home one night, and I remember this night as if it were yesterday. I'm watching TV, and I happen to have a very bad condition that I can only describe as being a TV yeller. I don't know if we have any TV yellers. You think the television or the car radio is a two-way communication device? That if you just yell loud enough, somebody on the other side will hear you and say, I'm hearing something from Santa Monica. Peterson is not happy with me. And one night, my wife turns to me and she goes, Pete, it's great that you're so passionate about some of these issues, but are you going to be the kind of guy that yells at the television for the rest of your life? Or are you going to be the kind of guy who does something about it? Now, I notice none of the husbands in this room are clapping because you understand the weight of that question. But I remember it so clearly, and it was 10 years ago. It was 10 years ago. I remember it so clearly because that really changed my life. I realized that we were living a very comfortable life, but I really wasn't having an impact. So it was then that my wife and I made the decision I was going to go back and get my master's in public policy. I did it at Pepperdine. Graduated about 8 years ago, and I had 2 job offers on my table. One was from the old printing and graphics business working for a friend of mine who has a shop over here not over here, but out the 10 in Monterey Park. And the other was to head up a nonprofit called Common Sense California, the mission of which was to support and promote greater civic engagement here in California. Now, I'm not going to tell you what job paid a lot more than the other, but I can say we didn't pick the job that paid a lot more than the other. And you can only do that when you have a wife that really believes in what we're doing. And for the last 8 years, I've been all over this state training and consulting public sector officials in how to do something they're not very good at, and that is engaging the rest of us in making decisions. And it's that perspective that I'm looking to take to Sacramento, because that culture of corruption up there doesn't really care what we think. Now, I've been to places that you wouldn't believe, like Bell and Vallejo, Salinas. I just did a training session here in Riverside 3 days ago over here in City Hall, training city officials here in how to do better public engagement. Because I really do believe that we are at a time in which the relationship between citizens and government is fundamentally broken. And we need people working inside government that care less about how government is doing and care more about how the rest of us are doing. But it's going to need someone that isn't just an outsider to government. It's going to need someone that's an outsider with experience. And folks, what I've been doing for the last 7 or 8 years uniquely prepares me for this particular office. As I've said many times, my opponents are running for the office of Secretary of State, but I'm running for the job. And it's an important job. And we should have people running for the office not because they're looking beyond what that next position is, but they desperately care about this one. So I'm asking you to get involved in this particular race, and I'll close on this for 3 reasons. Number 1, this is an important job. If you thought when you came in here this morning that the Secretary of State was out signing treaties with the state of Utah, I hope you know now it could be doing a lot more to make sure that our ballot initiative process is secure, is run with integrity, and that we're creating a better business climate, especially for small businesses right here in California. Number 2, this is a winnable race, okay? No clapping on that. No. I don't know if you believe that. I don't know if you believe that. There was a field poll conducted 3 weeks ago on this race, independent of the campaign. We didn't run it. We're leading by 13 points over the next leading Democrat. In fact, if you look at that field poll in which 4 other candidates were surveyed, 5 candidates total, if you add up the total percentages of the 4 other candidates, I'm still leading them all combined. Now, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Is it because I've got a great name? Is it because, as an NPR reporter recently reporting on this story said, that Peterson is, quote, Hollywood handsome in a Clark Kent kind of way? No. I'd like to think it, but no. It's because this year, it's not about Republicans against Democrats. It's about outsiders versus insiders. And it's not just about outsiders versus insiders. It's about outsiders with experience against insiders who really don't want that job. You know, the leading opponent in my race for me is a Democrat by the name of Senator Alex Padilla. And on the campaign trail, he's already talking about running for Dianne Feinstein's Senate seat in 2018. Folks, we got to stop this merry-go-round. This is a winnable race. We got the endorsement of the Los Angeles Times. And let me close with this. This is the last reason I hope you get involved. You might know that the Pepperdine, which is where I work, has a unique relationship with the Reagan Library. We've actually had an ongoing relationship with the Reagan family for many years. And because of that relationship, I was at the Reagan Library about 3 months ago, and I happen to know the executive director there, a guy by the name of Duke Blackwood. Duke has become a friend. And on this particular evening, he's a very sharp dresser. I couldn't help but notice a lapel pin he had on. It was the golden outline of the state of California. And in navy blue block letters right down the center of that state outline was the name Reagan. Now, it turns out this was a gift that Reagan gave to his staff during the second gubernatorial election. And because he worked at the library, Duke had one of these pins. And I said, Duke, I usually don't go in for tie tacks and pins and stuff like that, but that is the coolest looking lapel pin I've ever seen. And he looks at me and he goes, Peterson, you win this Secretary of State race, you get this lapel pin. This is an important office. This is a winnable race, and I want that lapel pin, people. Pete SOS is the website. I want you to get involved. Support it. I don't care if it's a $10 credit card donation. I don't care if it's spreading the word about the campaign. Please get involved in this race. Thank you very much.